Comic Book Savant, episode 402. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week, we're going to be doing a spoiler-filled review for Daredevil Season 3 on Netflix. If you guys haven't watched the season yet and you don't want to be spoiled, take a moment now, pause this podcast, go over to youtube.com/Comic Book Savant. You can watch my non-spoiler mini review of Season 3. And once you finish watching Season 3, you can come back and listen to this podcast, and we'll go deep into Easter egg spoilers and all that kind of stuff. But again, definitely, if you haven't watched it yet and you intend on watching it, I don't want to spoil anything for you. So definitely stop it now. Come back to this podcast after you've actually had a chance to watch the show. Now, with all that out of the way, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. Just a great resource. If you like this show and the content that I release here, you can go over to the Comics Podcast Network, and it's literally hundreds of podcasts listed there. You have some single person podcasts like myself. You have roundtable discussions. You have podcasts dedicated to particular publishers, teams, or individual characters. So you have tons of variety to pick and choose from and try out different things if you're looking for more comic book related podcasts and shows to consume. It's a great one-stop shop that a lot of us many years ago put together as a resource to help cross-promote one another and to help grow the area of comic book podcasting. And if you are aspiring to be a comic book podcaster and want to get listed on the network, if you go to that homepage and you send an email to the administrator, it might take a little bit because they're constantly getting submissions. They can add you on as well. I never really mentioned that, and I know sometimes you guys will message me from time to time and talk about inquiring about podcasting and starting a comic book podcast. That's always a good resource as well, the Comics Podcast Network, in helping grow your reach. It's so hard, especially when you're first starting out podcasting, growing an audience, and that being added onto that homepage and their feed in their Facebook page, more eyes can get on your show, especially when you're first starting out, to help you grow your audience. So definitely consider all those things when checking out the Comics Podcast Network. With all that out the way, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at InStockTrades.com. They're a sponsor for the show. One of the best places, if not the best place online, when you're looking for collected comic book editions, be it manga, oversized issue releases like we had with Action Comics 1000. They also have absolute editions, omnibuses, Marvel Masterworks, you name it, they have it. They have a huge collection of books for you to choose from. If you place an order $50 or more and you're a US-based customer, you get free shipping within the US. Unfortunately, if you're an international customer, you don't get that bonus perk when you hit that $50 threshold, but they do have some of the most competitive international shipping rates around, so you definitely can still get a huge amount of savings, just like you like the people in the U.S. would, by placing an order through InStockTrades.com, and they ship all over the world. So definitely take a moment, stop by InStockTrades.com, tell them you heard about them here on the Comic Book Savant podcast. That will help me immensely. And also, to piggyback off of what I said earlier about talking about comic book podcasting, I did a video on the YouTube channel. So if you guys don't follow me on YouTube, like I said earlier, it's youtube.com/Comic Book Savant. I did a really good video. It's a longer video. It's almost like a 35-minute video, but I go over my whole setup. I had got a lot of questions about it, and I just figured I would do a video. So it's a longer form. I just talk about the behind the scenes. I go over some of my equipment, I think the video before I had did a room tour. All of it was predicated off of questions that you guys that listen to the podcast and people on YouTube that watch the show, watch the YouTube channel, had asked me numerous times, and I finally got around to putting it all together. Many years ago when I first started the show, I got a lot of questions, and I did an episode talking about the whole process of being a podcaster and my process I kind of went through. It's evolved a little over time, and so I wanted to do a more full-formed thing in a video format, so I did that. So definitely check that out as well. If you don't follow me over on YouTube, take a moment to do that. I do extended content. It's basically an extension of this audio podcast through the YouTube channel. I do whatever I don't cover here, like individual trade reviews and comic reviews, TV show reviews, movie reviews, non-spoiler ones. I still do all the spoiler content here, but non-spoiler stuff like that I do over on the channel. So it offers more comic books about content, and you just get to see my ugly mug in the process of me talking. Instead of just hearing my voice, you get to see my face as well. So that's always a plus. That's what I like to call a win-win. You get more of me for free. But with all that being said, let's jump into Daredevil Season 3. It's been a lot, and before we dive directly into this season, I guess the elephant really in the room is what's going on over at Netflix between Marvel and Netflix. We know that, and I talked about this in previous episodes before, it's shifted really. We didn't know what was going to go on with these shows. We know that I think it's called Disney Play is what Bob Iger called it on a investment call. We know that Disney Play is coming, I guess sometime next year. I can't remember if it's the beginning of next year, 2019, or the end of 2019. But we know Disney Play is right around the corner, and soon all of Disney's content is going to be just straight taken off of Netflix. Now, this was a unique deal. We never knew all the particulars about it. Now, we had a cancellation of Iron Fist after Iron Fist Season 2, which was great. It was a huge improvement over Season 1. I reviewed both seasons, and I was very vocal about how I felt about Season 1. Season 2 was a total turnaround. It ended on such a high note. It set up so many good things. Then Netflix canceled the show. It was hard for me to believe that they invested. You could clearly tell more time, more effort, more money was put towards Season 2 of Iron Fist. And they set up so much great stuff. It just didn't make sense to me why you would do all that just to turn around and cancel the show. So, different press release, a joint press release was done. They said, it won't be a Season 3 of Iron Fist on Netflix. If you read, the wording was very particular about that, on Netflix. And then they were like, the adventures of the Iron Fist will go on. And they just kind of left it like that. So everybody was assuming, because they had not announced a renewal for Luke Cage for Season 3. Season 2, again, you could tell the people behind the scenes took a lot of feedback from what they heard from fans and, of course, executives probably over at Netflix and Marvel on what the problem was with the first season. They corrected that. Luke Cage Season 2 was extremely strong and, again, set up major storylines going in the future and took Luke Cage in a direction I did not predict when the season started from when the season ended. They did a phenomenal job with it. They introduced Bushmaster. The actor was great. They kind of set up future storylines and stuff they could do with Bushmaster. They did a lot of good stuff with that show as well. And they right before Daredevil Season 3 premiered, they announced they canceled Luke Cage. It wouldn't be back for a third season. Again, it's just confusing that you invest the money and put the work in to correct both shows when you could have just canceled them to begin with. You didn't have to do the Season 2s to make all the improvements and get your fans even that much more further invested in the shows just to cut the legs out from under us. Now, what I've heard different places online, I love Grace Randolph. If you ever check out Beyond the Trailer, it's a YouTube channel, Grace Randolph. I have mad love and respect for her. She's like one of my top places I go for like movie news that I report to you guys. So check out Grace Randolph Also, my boy John Campia, they're like my two go-tos. Collider Video, as well, or some of the places, as well as some of the comic book sites like Comic Book Resources and things like that I gather information and news that I talk about and I report to you guys. Sometimes IGN mixed in there as well, but those are some of my sources that I like to go to that are kind of dug in on the inside workings of stuff. So a lot of reports came out from the trades that was being reported online about, this is the crazy thing about Luke Cage for season 3. They already had a writer's room and they pretty much had half of the season written, half the season scripts written for season 3 when they get hit with this news. Well, why would Netflix do that? Now, different reports were coming out. It was like, is Disney forcing their hand? So they want this content over on their streaming service. We never knew. And when everything was being announced about content being pulled off, they never addressed the Marvel Netflix stuff directly. It was kind of danced around. And it was kind of the understanding that as long as Netflix kept producing the shows, they would have say-so and they would live there on Netflix. And I don't know, now Disney is becoming a direct competitor to Netflix, and they're both going to be going hard at one another. And I think basically, and I noticed something that was strange, and I mentioned it in my reviews of Luke Cage and of Iron Fist. They both were released with very little hoopla and advertising when you consider how much advertising money and budget Netflix put behind these shows when they first were released. The hoopla, and they were kind of just dropped on us. Now, Daredevil was originally not supposed to be released until like December. It was supposed to be released around the time of Aquaman. Then out of nowhere, they just bumped it up. Like, I think around New York Comic Con, they just dropped it like, hey, it's coming out in October. And I was like, all the other reports were like December, like right around the Friday, I think, of that Aquaman was coming out. And I was like, wow, that's just kind of weird that they just bumped it up like that, especially if it was already done and they could have released it. Why not release it? Why wait? I just thought it was weird, but I was like, whatever, we just get Daredevil earlier. I'm cool with that. I think systematically, and this is going to tie into my review of season 3 of Daredevil, I think basically Netflix is going to get rid of all these shows. I think they're producing all these things we already know. Punisher season 2's in the can already. Jessica Jones season 3 is currently shooting, and how they're canceling shows. And I'm going to get into this when I fully talk about Daredevil. I think they're setting up that they're going to cancel all these shows. It's weird because it could be a move of, shows that are canceled kind of how I guess perception is that certain times shows have to be bad and that's why they got canceled. I don't necessarily think that's always the case. I watch a lot of TV. If you guys are super long-term fans of the podcast, I used to do multiple podcasts, and one podcast I used to do was Pop Media Savant, where I would review television and movies that were outside of the comic book realm. So, I'm a heavy TV movie head as well as just as much as I am a comic book fan. And you've seen different things where certain networks want to push a certain new agenda for programming and things of that nature. And I kind of think they want all their ties with Disney over, because they know Disney is coming for them. A chunk of their most popular content outside of their original content was the Disney content that they're going to be losing. The Disney Marvel movies, the Star Wars movies, all that stuff is going to be pulled from Netflix. So I think this is a chess move more than anything else. But I feel like it's kind of dumb because you've put in the money in these shows. I don't know if Marvel is going to want to touch them. My hope is, because as a fan of these series, I want to see them continue. And I would hope, and I know Feige is overseeing the Marvel TV stuff that they're announced with the Scarlet Witch show and the Loki show that's going to be on Disney Play. And I don't know if Feige would want the headache or burden of bringing these characters in, but I feel like they're so perfectly cast, except for Finn Jones's Iron Fist. He's grown on me, though. I think this last season helped him a lot, but I feel like Michael Coulter as Luke Cage is phenomenal. Christian Ritter as Jessica Jones is phenomenal. Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing. Oh, she is awesome. Simone Missick as Misty Knight. They have so many phenomenal actors. Vincent D'Onofrio. I don't know why I can't say his name now. Vincent D'Onofrio. I think that's it. As Wilson Fisk. Even Charlie Cox as Daredevil. These are great castings. And I mean, you could go with that and incorporate them into the larger MCU like they should be by moving them over, and where they kind of have, especially Luke Cage and Iron Fist especially, they are so set up for more stories. They're just scratching the surface, and they finally course corrected and have those characters on the right track. I would snatch them up in a second and put them on Disney Play if I was Disney, and they can't do that based on their agreement. We don't know what that whole agreement was when they went in with each other for these shows. I don't know if Netflix loses the rights to the characters once they cancel and they revert back to Marvel, and they can do with them as they wish, but it'll be totally on their dime. It's not a co-production type thing where they're sharing cost or what. So it's going to be interesting to see. My feeling coming out of this season of Daredevil, and especially with the ending of the season, I feel like that was it left me in a weird place. It was kind of like what I talked about when I reviewed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I did not, the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I didn't do here. I did on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Comic Book Savant, where the last season, just so much stuff had happened, through the season. It came to a perfect conclusion, and it felt like if they didn't do any more of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the current incarnation, I was cool with it, because it felt more like a series end than an end of a storyline, and they didn't really set up too much to go into next season. And we know that the next season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't coming out till next summer after Avengers 4 comes out. So you have nothing to look forward to, because we don't know what's going to happen in that next season, and it wasn't any cliffhangers or anything to get you going or anticipating what was going to be next. And that was kind of how season 3 of Daredevil had ended. Now we still have the same players. Charlie Cox is back, Deborah Ann Wall, Eldon Henson as Foggy, and Deborah Ann Wall back as Karen, Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk. We had J.I. Lee as Ray Nadeem, a great supporting character. And the one note that sticks out in my head as I watch season 3 is that it was just as much. It was interesting because it was really the first time, because season 2 of Daredevil was so heavy with setup for about Elektra in the Hand, and so much about the Punisher, and even some with the Kingpin and Wilson being in jail, and his crossover with the Punisher, and the few segments he wasn't in it much, but it still touched on, it was setting up so much other stuff. And it wasn't as focused on Daredevil as season 1 was. This season they went and tackled a lot of like Born Again, the famous storyline by Frank Miller and Daredevil. And the focus kind of came back on Daredevil in this season, which I enjoyed. But they did some different things. It was definitely darker. I love the introduction of Wilson Bethel as Dex Poindexter, a.k.a. Bullseye. They did a good job. The last two shows, Iron Fist season 2 did a great job. They brought in Typhoid Mary, and let me think about the actress that played Alice Eve. Her Mary Walker / Typhoid Mary was so insane. It was. I didn't think the actress had it in her, and she killed it, man. She really knocked it out the box. And I think the same thing with Wilson Bethel as Dex Poindexter. I don't know much about Bullseye. Because the weird thing about it is I like Daredevil as a character. I haven't read a lot of Daredevil as far as other Marvel heroes of the same ilk. I haven't read nearly as much, and I'm not nearly as versed in like the iconic stories. I think I have Born Again, and I haven't read it yet. I think I bought it when season 2 came out. They had a sale on Comixology, and I picked up. It was like Visionaries, Frank Miller, and I think it has Born Again in it. So I haven't read it. I didn't start reading Daredevil like seriously until they did Marvel Knights, and Kevin Smith came on with Joe Quesada, and they did that initial run. I never read the Bendis runs or the Brubaker. I never read all that stuff with Daredevil. So I'm not nearly as versed. I read, growing up, I read some of the Frank Miller stuff, and some of the stuff like before and after he was on, because like I told you, I had my cousins got me into comics. So I read their books that they had laying around. So they didn't have long, consistent runs with Daredevil as they had with other, characters in other books. So my history with Daredevil is kind of spotty. I don't know a ton about him, but how they introduced Bullseye and his backstory was just so fascinating and so interesting. They really made him which if you go back to the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, where they kind of made him a jokey, over-the-top character, they made him very subtle, nuanced, disturbing, and scary. Literally made him such a scary character. And we never got to even see him in his traditional outfit, which I love. They did the same thing with Typhoid Mary. We never got to see her in her, face paint and her 80s type outfit. We never got a chance to see that, but she was so much the character and how she portrayed it, and she was freaking scary. And the same thing with Wilson Bethley. I mean, he knocked it out the park. Also, with the supporting characters, Joanne Whaley as Sister Maggie, she was so good. I just loved every scene that she was in, and I loved her scenes with Charlie Cox. They had such great chemistry in there, back and forth. Was just great. So even the quiet moments really worked for me because it was so much there, so much going on there. Peter McRobbie, back his father, Lansom, he always stands out, and I think this season more than any, he was more so in the forefront, and he had more screen time, I feel like, maybe than he had in previous seasons. And he always clicks with Charlie Cox, and he's always kind of been his moral compass throughout the different seasons. So it was good seeing him in an expanded role in this season. I liked Amy Rutberg as Marcy Stahl. Her relationship with Foggy has grown. She kind of came off as the uncaring type when we first were introduced to her in season 1, but as a progression, I really like the way, the arc of her character and her relationship with Foggy. Also, I thought a standout, I tried to list everyone that were standouts to me outside of the normal cast. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Sunita Desperde as Seema Nadeem. She was Ray Nadeem's wife. I really felt like she wasn't in the show a ton, but she was she had a very big presence in the scenes that she was in, and standing up to her husband, seeing her husband was in trouble, keeping up the good front for their son. I just really thought she was a standout. She really popped whenever she was on screen, and she always resonated with me as well. I've always liked Kate Udall. She played FBI agent Tammy Hatley. She was really good as, again, minor roles. These are minor supporting roles, but they all added and they all had their parts to play in the overarching storyline of this season. And they all had like their moments, their spotlights, their twists, their turns, and they really stood out. The acting on this show is top notch. Vincent D'Onofrio, I love him as Wilson Fisk. I think I loved his performance consistently through season 1, the little we saw him in season 2 and season 3. I think his, I I resonate back to his performance of Wilson Fisk in season 1 more so than I do in 3, because I liked seeing the violent outbursts, and they were so much more subtle. And when they would bubble up and he would just explode in season 1, I felt like they did a few of them, but you could see him coming, and you could constantly tell he was holding back. He nuanced the character. He really put it out on the line, and like he has portrayed like the best Wilson Fisk that I've seen, that just embodies the overall character. And we know he's been a Daredevil villain, a Spider-Man villain. So I'm familiar with Kingpin just through multiple years of reading Spider-Man and the times of reading Daredevil. And he just embodies the character so well, and he put his all into it. And it's just, you can rip these characters. I feel like so much more in this show, more than any of the other shows. Like, you can grab just everybody from this cast and put them in one of the MCU movies in minor roles or bigger roles with Charlie Cox's Daredevil and what have you, and it would just work so well. I really do. And I would love to see his Wilson Fisk in a Spider-Man movie down the road, because he is just that character. And I just right now, as of right now, it could change over time. Right now, I just can't see anybody else casting that role that could do it quite like he does. And he's so physically imposing as the character as well. So he doesn't just look the role or act the role. He encompasses it, just mind, body, and soul. He is Wilson Fisk. When you see him and with him in the fight scenes and things, he really nails it on all cylinders with the character. I would say more so than anything else, this season is more of a slow burn. That's why it's kind of a delay with everything. I kind of been dealing with some personal stuff. You guys know that I talk about it. Over the years I've talked about it a lot. I lost my dad 7 going on 8 years ago. Was it 8 years ago this year? His birthday was last week. Emotionally, I've been going through a lot of stuff dealing with that. It's never easy to lose a parent, more so when you're the person to find his body. I was extremely close to my father in the later part of my life. We weren't really close earlier in life. I was going through a lot of stuff that was making it hard for me to focus. I have plenty of content I want to put out for you guys between here, the Patreon, with the podcast I do there, and the YouTube channel. I had to kind of step back and get my mind and my body back right. I was dealing with that. And watching this, it was a slow burn, and it was dealing with relationships and familial relationships too. And it's really, in what I'm trying to say with that is, this season was really good. It was kind of what people accuse the shows of. It was a slow burn, but it was really good, and I enjoyed it all. It was hard to get through, not because of the personal things that I talked about. It was normally I could just, you guys normally know, like the Monday after I'll drop an episode, I drop the spoiler review that I'm doing now, the video, and put everything out. And it was just like I was enjoying it, but it was like it was maybe too, with all the Netflix stuff going on and them canceling shows, as I was going through the season and where, seeing that where it ultimately goes and how it ends, I felt like, wow, they're like it. This is like how it ends. Feels like this is the end of Marvel Netflix Daredevil. I don't know if that's the case, but more so than any of the last shows. Things were set up in Jessica Jones for Jessica Jones season 3. Things were set up in Punisher season 1 for Punisher season 2. Things were set up in Iron Fist season 2 for Iron Fist season 3, though it got canceled. Same thing with Luke Cage. So it's interesting. This definitively felt like the ending of a chapter with no setup for what is to come next. It was a little tease. We saw the little tease at the end where they're trying to fix Bullseye's spine, and they do a little tease where they zoom in on his eyes, and it kind of has like a bullseye kind of effect or whatever. But they've teased things when Luke Cage season 1 where he fights his brother and he's beaten up and the doctor comes to save him, and they didn't touch on that at all in season 2 of Luke Cage. It was like that whole thing was forgotten after how fans responded to that second half of that season. They didn't touch it. So if any, it doesn't matter if anything comes from it or not. But when it comes to that, it would have been cool to maybe see they would have set up something, because we know Mary stayed in the New York area after the events of Iron Fist season 2, and we know that she's originally a Daredevil character, and they kind of have her like as a paid assassin as well. It would have been kind of interesting to see her pop up, or some hints that she's watching him, or trickling into that part of the Netflix Marvel Netflix universe. But I really feel like at this point Netflix has no interest whatsoever to continue on with any of these shows. And even though they're going to produce these last seasons to get them out, I feel like after we're going to see them continue to cancel shows. I won't be surprised if I feel like now, because they moved up Daredevil, they're going to be done with these shows. But I feel like by the beginning of 2019, they're going to be done. So, like I said, we know Punisher's finished. If they moved up if they moved Daredevil up from December to October to put that out, I feel like we're in that December when they're going to drop, when Aquaman comes out in the theaters. They're probably going to still use that date. We'll probably start getting some information about Punisher dropping in December. And I think they're going to do the same maneuver they did right now, like how they were super quiet for months and months and months about Luke Cage. And then right when they release, without much fanfare and advertisement, they're going to release Punisher Season 2. And I feel like once that is released, they're going to announce that they canceled Daredevil. It's not going to come back for Season 4. And I think they're going to continue the trend until they cancel all the shows. I don't know if Punisher Season 2 is going to kind of, because like I said, the other shows set up that it was going to be more to come. But I think they really pivoted and shifting in a direction that they want to purge themselves of any Disney content, not going to want to be reliant, and they don't want to take the bill for it anymore. And because that's money they can put into more totally original content that they own, that they're gonna jettison the whole Marvel Netflix universe. And it's going to be up to Disney what they choose to do with it. The competition is about to get real, y'all. This is just business power moves right here, and I guess it makes sense in a way. But it was no way. Disney had made overtures to try to get in with Netflix before they did the whole Fox thing and to build their own streaming service, and there was no way the government was going to let that happen. They were going to try to. Bob Iger was trying to see if he could bring in the CEO or COO of Netflix and try to bring him on as his replacement, because he was going to retire from the company. And they were trying. I think at one point Disney was trying to make that move, but Netflix, is worth so much. Disney really didn't have enough money to really be able to just come out and buy them, and I don't think the government by any means was going to let them buy Netflix. So they went the other route, and that's still not final yet, but it's looking like that's going to be final some point in the near future, within the next 6 months, with the Disney Fox thing. And then they're definitely moving forward with their streaming service, and they'll be a majority share owner in Hulu. So it's so many other things behind the scenes beyond that are making the moves ever so more transparent what Netflix is doing right now, because they're preparing to battle with their biggest I can't talk. Gosh, let me take a breath. Opposition to date, which is going to be Disney, and they're the juggernaut that they are at this point, and that Disney's coming directly for them, and they're going to have the content. Especially if the Fox deal goes through, and that back catalog with the other ones that they've acquired, and then you got the Star Wars in there, and that the fact that they're taking all that stuff off of Netflix, and it's going to force our hands as consumers to be like, hey, I still like Netflix because I still like the content on Netflix. So you're going to be paying that. And if you want the Marvel movies, if you want, they're going to have original content and original movies. They're already they're already announcing stuff. The Mandalorian, that's already shooting. That's a Star Wars exclusive live action series that's going to be on the streaming service. They got a Lady and a Tramp movie that's going to be an exclusively for Disney Play streaming movie that they're doing live action CGI, hybrid movie. So it's a lot of stuff going on that's going to be coming down the pike that as consumers, it's going to be another streaming service we're going to have to pick up. How much is that going to cost? Will they charge more for a premium because they feel like they have a premium product and they have the licenses people love? Or if Netflix going to start charging because, they're the gold standard. There's a lot of things that we're going to have to make decisions on in the next year when it comes to streaming. Streaming isn't going away. It's only becoming a bigger thing. And then you still have cable there that lingers in the background. So it's going to be very interesting on how much you feel like you can, financially afford when it comes to these streaming services. Because if you then have cable, but then you then have Netflix, then you then have Disney Play, then you then have Hulu. Then if you have something like the WWE Network, or HBO Go, it's the money that cutting the cord, and I've talked about that. I used to talk about that a lot in Pop Media Savant and my other podcast. I had started doing Simple to Savant about cord cutting. Then the savings that you once had are going to go away because all of these a la carte services, their costs attached to them, and if the more you add on, the less savings that you're going to have because streaming is the new future of all of this. It really is. That people are now setting up their own walled gardens. So where Netflix housed everybody's content, now they're all like, hey, they're making a lot of money doing it. We own our own content. Why let them, have it and make money off of that? But we can make our own money by doing our own service. And they have their own little walled garden. So, it's really interesting to see where this is going to go. And I feel like as a fan of these shows, it hurts my heart to be like seeing them all just get canceled and that they put the effort in it and the actors and all the people behind the scenes made these wonderful shows and they're getting canceled one by one. And my hope and prayer is that they get, resurrected in some shape, form, or fashion with these same core actors because I think they did a great job. And Finn Jones, even the reservations I had with him, you could tell he put his heart and his soul into this season of Iron Fist, and he had more time to prepare because he didn't have much time to prepare before. And the work that Charlie Cox and all the the actors put in on Daredevil, oh man, it was just so good. The acting was on such a high level. I have a love-hate relationship with Karen Page's character and Foggy Nelson. I talked about it a lot in season 2 and even in my review of the Defenders. I think Karen's character regressed some in this season for me. So I think she's like my least favorite character of all the characters that we kind of deal with in the Daredevil universe. I always like her more with Frank in the Punisher world and her attachment even in season 2 with him. I like that Karen the best, I think, in the reporter Karen. Foggy character did not regress as much as I thought he would. But now in all the Daredevil I did read, Foggy always, no matter how Matt treats him, he always, because it's his best friend, he always kind of goes back to him no matter what. And that kind of got put on full display in this season, especially in the end. And that's just a character. I understand that. But Eldon Henson as Foggy, he's really grown on me. I love the cameo he had in Luke Cage season 2. It wasn't any, none of any crossover. Certain things were mentioned. Jessica Jones was, they threw some shade at Jessica Jones at one point. They talked about different things and whatnot about the Defenders series. But it wasn't you didn't see anybody cross over with Daredevil or anything like that in this season, which with the storyline they were telling, I understood that I was cool with that. But all in all, I feel like this is a required viewing show. I would have to say, hands down, I give this a 8.75 out of 10. I couldn't get it to a 9 because I was conflicted. The fight scenes I enjoyed the fight scenes. They were very unique, and they played up Bullseye's remarkable skill set extremely well. They were few and far between. I felt like I like season 3 more than I like season 2. And I lean towards, I like the portrayal of Wilson Fisk more so in season 1 than I did in season 3. But I loved the other supporting characters. I loved Ray Nadim's character, Dex Poindexter and his backstory. Sister Maggie I loved as well. The stuff with Foggy I kind of liked. The Karen stuff was kind of hit or miss, and all the FBI intrigue and all the craziness with the FBI. All that stuff was kind of good. And like I said, it felt more like a slow burn to me in watching it. So it's definitely worth a watch. I can't get it to that you must watch, much buy type situation. It's just shy of it for me. It's just the feel coming out of the season. Once I sat and watched everything, I kind of just sat yesterday after I finished it and just kind of was in my thoughts about it and really what I thought about it to grade it. And I try to give my grades a lot of thought when I put them out to you guys. And it just wasn't like, this is the greatest thing ever. It was really good, but it was just shy of greatness for me. And I can't necessarily put my finger on what held it back, but it was just something there that it didn't resonate quite the way I wanted it to overall. And so it was a good, not great, or great, but not awesome, I guess. That's how close. It's right there away from it for me. But again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, at this point, how they ended the show, I feel like a cancellation is coming sooner than later. It was like barely no freaking advertisement for these shows, not like how we saw before. It was kind of just dumped out on Netflix, and I feel like they're gonna keep doing it. I want to hear what you guys think, so leave comments. You can always go to the website on comicbooksavant.com. I post all the podcast episodes there, so even though you get them on your through iTunes or whatever your podcatcher is, you can always always go to the website and leave comments on the episode. And feel free, I want to get more feedback from you guys, because I want to know what you think about these topics. I want to know the things you want me to cover going forward. I want suggestions from you. I rely on you guys as a community, not just listeners or numbers. I want us to connect more and build this community further. And I need for you guys to reach out, and I need feedback from you guys on what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of as me doing the shows. So please take a moment to stop by the website. Even if you don't want to leave a comment, you can always go to comicbooksavant.com and click on the contact us page and just drop me an email if you don't want to, like, comments for other people to see. And, I won't, just tell me in the email if you want me to talk about it on the show or not, or just take it to heart and bring it under advisement. But I want to hear from you guys and what you think about the content. I want to make content that you guys like and that I enjoy as well, that we enjoy together. And I want you guys to be a part of the collaborative process of creating it. As always, you can follow me on social media at Comic Book Savant, on Instagram, on Twitter. Again, check out comicbooksavant.com, youtube.com/comicbooksavant. If you guys haven't, check out the Patreon. It is patreon.com/comicbooksavant. For just as a little as $1 a month, you can get access to the Comic Book Savant extra feeds. I did those for a while over here on the main podcast. But for $1 a month over on Patreon to help support the show, you continue to get those. I continue to do another weekly podcast, Patreon exclusive podcast. So again, as different tiers, but for as little as $1 a month, you get the Comic Books Savant extra feed for just that introductory level. And there's other tiers there. So if you check out my Patreon page, if you want to help support the show, it has all the different tiers and all the different bonuses that go along with it as being a supporter of the show. I'm on as far as streaming services. I am on Stitcher now. Well, I've been on Stitcher. I got on iHeartRadio and I think Spotify as well. I was working with my my host company, Libsyn, that I host the podcast on, and they had ways that I could get the show listed on the different streaming services. So I've been doing that as well. So I think I got approved for iHeartRadio recently, and then Spotify through them as well. Let me double check, make sure I'm telling you guys the right thing. It's so much to keep up with when you're a one man band that does all this. Let me just double check. Yeah, so Spotify, and I just got an email. I want to say it's iHeartRadio as well. That is the other streaming service that I just recently got listed on. That's the most recent one. Spotify I've been on for a little bit now. So you can find me on the different streaming services as well. So I'm expanding out. I'm trying to get the show out as many places as possible for you guys to be able to consume it on the go as easily as possible as well. And if you're new to the show, you can always find every podcast episode besides the Comic Book Savant extras. That's all through Patreon on the website. So the newest YouTube videos, they're always posted there. You can actually stream them off the site in the podcast as well. That's all I have for you guys for this week. Let me know what you think about season 3 of Daredevil. And like I said, leave comments and feedback along with that. I'm your host, James Harris. This is the Comic Book Savant podcast, and I will see you guys again next week for another episode. You guys take care, and you have a good week. Sorry for the delay with the episode as well. I should be back on track next week, so I will see you guys then. Take care.